This came out earlier today, but we were doing the podcast, so I didn't get to see it. Director's Take retrospective on Season 6 Hero Balance. This is not Aaron Keller. This is Alec, who's the lead hero designer. So, Director's Take, but not Aaron, so we'll see how it goes. Okay. Hey all, this is Alec, lead hero designer, stepping in for Aaron this week. We thought this Director's Take would be a good time to chat about our heroes, recent balance changes, and what we've learned from them, and talk a bit about the philosophy behind our two upcoming reworks for Sombra and Roadhog. For those who haven't heard, those are coming Season 7, so yeah. Illari and the safe side of strong. Let's start with Illari. Going to Illari's launch, our slogan was safe side of strong. We want hero releases to be impactful. It's best for the game for a number of reasons, but most importantly, it creates change throughout the meta. An impactful hero launch can shift other heroes' viability and create new and unique team compositions. An unimpactful hero launch can feel as if the game didn't enter a new season. So this is what they probably learned with the whole Life Weaver thing. And we're like, we need to have her a bit on the stronger side. I don't totally, unfortunately, believe this. Yes, I believe it's probably true. But let's be honest with ourselves. You want to shift the game up because it gets people to play more. And a lot of the casuals come in at the start of new seasons. And it's the difference between them playing for 2 to 3 days or 2 to 3 weeks. So I understand Alex is probably right. This is probably his perspective. But like, at the same time, though, I think that the reason why you want a stronger hero at launch isn't just for that. It's for people to actually play it and play the game longer, because that's what games truly want and truly need. Because that was not their stance beforehand. Making a new hero feel impactful on launch is challenging because we are asking you to choose between that hero and their overall potential versus picking the heroes that you may have hundreds or thousands of hours on. What? Players like to try new things, but players also like to win. To mitigate this friction, while you are learning the nuances of the hero, we generally will continue to aim for the safe side of strong with our hero releases, and then tune them where necessary. Yeah, that's the right call. That is the right way to do it. In situations where the hero's kit contains mechanics we describe as more sharp or potentially polarizing, say we were to release Widowmaker again, we may exercise more caution with this approach. I don't understand the reference. Is more sharp? And then to Widow? So like her ability to one-shot you? I guess? Maybe? But like, wouldn't you also want to follow your approach where you started strong and then dial it back? So unless it's for like literally one-shots or probably some other form of immortality, maybe? I don't know. Anyways. We aimed to make sure Illari was powerful, and we were happy to see that she launched in an impactful, game-changing state. But it was important to evaluate where that power was coming from. A lot of her initial power budget was wrapped up in her healing pylon and her lethality. Despite its potency, the healing pylon itself can feel invisible throughout a match due to its fire and forget automated healing. Well, that's because just Overwatch players are really, really bad at shooting turrets, and like Torb and Sim have always been like super notorious for that. So yes, the problem isn't just that, it's the fact that you get all this value for something that sits there AFK, which is why originally when it first got released, I said that's the only thing she probably needed tuned. And then eventually they actually tuned her ult as well, which, you know, you can say what you want about that, but the only thing I ever felt was too strong was her pylon, so. It was one of the first things we tuned for a few reasons. First, it can create situations that resemble stalemates. Okay. Next, breaking through the line of defense to shoot the pylon can be a really difficult task. Oh, this is probably low ranks. Probably metal ranks. There was so much healing, people probably weren't dying. Very interesting. It shouldn't be hard to kill once you're shooting it. Yeah, I mean, not wrong. It does have shields, though, so I'm a little bit... Anyways, whatever. Finally, a more passive ability. as a more passive ability, it does not have the immediate impact and satisfaction of other elements in her kit, like her primary and secondary fire. Going forward, we'll continue to iterate on Ilari's balance while making sure she doesn't feel muted. We think there's still a good amount of room there, and we'll be making an adjustment to her secondary fire healing in Season 7. Whoa, don't tell me you're gonna buff her right click. Oh my god, please. No, it does 120 per second. Like, she can just choose somebody not to die. Don't. Oh, man, dude. We just had this whole podcast. Oh my god, I want to cry. Layers of balance. Now let's talk about some recent balance changes in how we approach our start of season, excuse me, and mid-season updates. There's a few goals when we approach balancing Overwatch 2, but two that are consistently front of mind are that hero changes should be an improvement to the game experience, whether that to be an individual hero themselves or to the overall metagame. Okay. And to also keep the game feeling fresh across seasons. Okay, that part I agree with. That's a good one. With these goals in focus, we aim to make impactful changes that meaningfully inject themselves into the gameplay loop of a hero. Yeah, you lost me. The changes that have been happening or have happened don't totally reflect that, in my opinion. At least with mid-seasons. Start of seasons, maybe, but mid-seasons, absolutely not. There may also be a number tuning alongside those, but we don't want to be in a world of arbitrarily injecting change by shifting the same numbers up and down from season to season, like Soldier 76 primary fire damage, for example. But that's what's been happening. That's exactly what's happening, though. So, that's not the goal, but, like, that's... Like, Bastion's a great example of just buff the fuck out of a bunch of his numbers and give him a bunch of wild shit. And then he starts dominating and gets nothing at mid-season. And then, like, eventually, came out yesterday, they took away the extra armor thing. Which, like, I can't believe he even had that. I remember back then when I saw it, I was like, what? Why? So, like, I hear you, but I also don't... That from what we've seen, that's not totally true. So while a balance update may have reactive changes that look to knock down some of the top performing heroes, it should also have changes that invoke intrigue and have you asking questions like, how does this new ripple on an ability affect my matchup? What? It should also have changes that invoke intrigue and then have you asking questions like, how does this new ripple on an ability affect my matchups? This just sounds like just adding random shit to give the game more complexity. Like the Bastion thing. Like, if I get Bastion a little bit low, and he hits shift, and now all of a sudden he's got an extra 50 armor, is that really like a thought-provoking question, or is that more of like a, yeah, that's awful? So I don't know about that one. When considering non-reactive changes to heroes, we usually begin with a question or overarching goals. Let's take the recent Zarya changes for example. Our aim here was to add more incentive to Zarya bubbling allies versus using 2 bubbles for herself, a fairly common behavior. Okay, but like the baseline problem for why this happens is because, well, one, if you're not bubbling yourself on Zarya, you can't even make plays half the time because you're going to get hard pressured out. If you are going to play that play style of bubbling other people in, you play way more passive, and that's so boring. Like, I thought for sure that the meta was going to become instantly like bubble the Reaper in. Unfortunately, at least in ladder play, it's been much more Bastion. That could change with Overwatch League. Who knows? But at least at the moment, like, let's say Bastion gets hard nerfed and Zarya stays the way she is. I could totally see like Reaper bubbling Zarya in could be like the new playstyle. But that's not good. Like, that's not a good thing. I don't know. Like, I understand that they want them to bubble more, but why do they want them to bubble more? What's the point? Like, why do you value that interaction? You know, like instead of questioning why aren't people doing it, Question, why do you want people to do it? Anyways. And honestly, the only reason that's realistically a thing is because it's an Overwatch 1 tank that got kind of reworked. So we're like, well, they have to bubble someone else. That's her identity. And it's like, well, what made it that her identity was Overwatch 1. Now we're in Overwatch 2 and like the game's changed. So anyways, how do we incentivize that enough? How do we make it a noticeable in-game? A common strategy we employ here is to layer multiple changes onto a hero that all help achieve our stated goal. For Zarya, that was the reduced cooldown for using a bubble on an ally, plus the increased size of the ally bubble, plus the increased health of the ally bubble. Yes, but then there's another plus here that's not written down. Is it plus you also get more ult charge? So like, because it's a higher health, normally if you bubble yourself, you get 40 energy. When you bubble someone else and they crack the bubble, you get 45 energy. So there's 4 things in here that like they're hard forcing. Like you need to bubble other people. Like why though? Why are you forcing that play style? It's weird. It's so weird to me. Like I've had this really, really deep itch recently that I feel like the balance philosophy for tank is old support, where you're supposed to be enabling everyone else and you're not a playmaker anymore. You're basically there to stand there, keep their tank in check, and then enable your teammates to do shit. And that's not what tank was, and it's kind of boring. And because you're the one who takes all the struggles, you take all the CC, you take all the damage. You're not the star player, you're the goalkeeper. You know, like you don't get to be the, as SVB made as a point in the podcast, you don't get to be the striker or the star player anymore. You're now the role that nobody else wanted to play, and like you're like a defender, or in football like an offensive lineman. Like you don't get no credit. You only get blamed. Like if you do your job, it's like you were supposed to. If you f***ed up, everyone knows you f***ed up, and it's really ass, you know? Like, I don't want to do that in my fun time. Anyways, while this strategy comes up against our overall complexity goals, layering allows us to have individual changes that work synergistically together without needing to have any particular extreme individual changes. So they're basically saying they give a bunch of very small changes to end up having a big one instead of changing something big. Like one change, like a bunch. This also helps when we want to further fine-tune what we're trying to achieve, as we can easily remove any number of the smaller layered changes as needed. But like the question is, why are you doing that? Why are you forcing that? Like, I don't understand. If you are willing to pull back quickly enough, layering is an approach that we'll continue to utilize in certain instances. For Zarya, we're going to be pulling back on the size of ally bubbles plus health of the ally bubble, but we'll be keeping the reduced cooldown. Well, but why? Like, okay, sure, but why? At that point, you're still going to keep using Zarya bubble the same way you were beforehand. The only difference is if you do need to bubble somebody else, you're going to get it back slightly quicker. Which I guess, but the average player knows nothing about this and they don't give a shit. And I think even high-level play, it's not going to be that useful. It's just going to be like a cool little like, oh, okay, sure. Coming soon. Looking closer at Season 6 and the current metagame, we've seen Bastion, Orisa, and Torbjorn rise in popularity. Okay. The standout among them has been Bastion. He's been succeeding at all ranks and is higher than we'd like at the highest levels of play. Around a 55% unmirrored win rate. Yeah, I'm not surprised there. Bastion just... Actually, SVB made a good point. Is like, why do we even have tank busters anymore? What's the point? Like, we don't actually need characters like Bastion in Overwatch 2. We don't have tons of tanks like we did in Overwatch 1. And then eventually we had roll queue, so it was only 2 tanks. And now we're actually only at 1 tank. Like, why does the idea of a tank buster still exist? It's a question that I think deserves at least a conversation. We're happy with the added reliability to his primary fire and tactical grenade. Yeah, I've seen Bastions jump from the low ground of King's Row into the windows. I don't know how they do it, but it's wild. And we're also going to be removing his armor repair when transforming into configuration assault. Should have never had that in the first place. That has made Bastion quite difficult to kill, even when out of the position. A note here, in the middle of writing this blog, we decided to hotfix this change earlier than Season 7. That's a good change. I'm glad that they did that. I'm really glad that they did this, because it was desperately needed. But we should have never been in that position in the first place. Some adjustments that have been reverting or pulling back at the start of Season 7. Orisa Fortified Damage Reduction. Oh, Orisa's probably going to die with that. Torbjorn's Primary Fire Recovery Time. Yeah, I needed that. And May's changes that we introduced in Season 5. Wait, what? And May's changes that we introduced in Season 5. On those reverts to May, it is important to recognize when a swath of changes isn't resulting in an improved gameplay. Our goal of trying to reintroduce some of her previous minigame to her primary fire was a good one. No, it wasn't. But it resulted in a hero that was more frustrating to play against, especially from a tank point of view, and wasn't clearly more engaging or effective to play. So the reverting May. 1. We all called this. 2. Watch it go back and still have CC. God. Anyways, finally we're oh man, I can't believe I spoke that into existence. Finally, we're looking forward to revealing our plans on our upcoming reworks. Sombra changes will be coming at the start of Season 7. Here are some of our slated goals headed to our rework. Make Sombra more committal when engaging. Interesting. Increase the active feel throughout her kit. Interesting. Uphold her current hacker identity and playstyle. Oh boy. I'm scared. Roadhog is currently undergoing the finishing touches that will release with his rework in Season 7's mid-season patch. Our broad goals for his reworks as follows. Increase his ability to protect his team and claim space. Protect his team? Interesting. Maintain his overall identity and playstyle. Interesting. Move some of his power around so that his effectiveness isn't so tied to his one-shot potential. That's pretty good. The whole one-shot thing was a big problem, but I guess we'll just have to see how they do it, because I don't know. I don't have the most faith right now. We'll get into more details when Sombra and Roadhog reworks in the weeks ahead, including looks at a new ability for each of them. Okay. Wait a minute. Including a new ability for each of them? Wait, isn't that like the point of a rework? Okay. That's all for now. Thank you for your continued feedback, and I'll see you in game. Okay. Yeah, I don't totally agree with a lot of this. I actually don't like it, but I'm glad to at least hear it out. I'm glad that it's being communicated. I'd rather take the communication and have the conversation than not have the conversation. However, though, the way this is worded and the way a lot of the ideologies are happening could probably explain why things feel so bad.